So we'll try to move as expediently as we can. I think this one will probably have a lot more logic and a little less emotion, so hopefully it'll be an easier deliberation for you. So tonight we're presenting a proposed ordinance focusing on reducing deaths, injuries, and property damage related to distracted driving. A little background. Try switching the view. And obviously, what Rudy's trying to set up is just one simple slide, so I can move while he's trying to set it up, and if it doesn't work, we're still good. A little background. As you saw in your packet, 47 out of 50 states currently have some form of law restricting mobile phones while driving. Thank you, sir. Out of those 47, 21 ban the use of mobile phones without a hands-free device. So currently in Arizona, Arizona does have some legislation addressing the issue, but it's very narrowly focused on school bus drivers and those with a graduated driver's license, which are essentially people under the age of 18 trying to learn how to be good drivers. And that one just recently passed in 2018, focused on the graduated driver. The state has fallen short over a number of years. There have been attempts in the state legislature to produce a statewide statute addressing the use of electronic devices, specifically phones with hands-free, and those have all failed. In this county, in Yavapai, we are, again, very fortunate to collaborate very well with our neighbors throughout the county, both on this side in the Verde and on the other side of the mountain in the Prescott region. Last year, County Supervisor Jack Smith testified before the State Legislature's Transportation Committee, making a plea to the State Legislature to enact a law governing the use of mobile phones. Although it was unanimously passed in that committee, it failed at the legislature once again. As such, the county led the way in Yavapai County and drafted pretty much the ordinance that we're bringing before you today, with very little deviation from their original verbiage. Since the county's adoption of the ordinance in October of last year, I believe, cities to include Prescott Valley, and Chino Valley have adopted the ordinance mirroring the county's ordinance. I believe Jerome considered it perhaps tonight, but I know they are considering, don't quote me on the date, but they're considering as you are tonight. Believe it or not, Cottonwood has led the way also in the area of distracted driving in this county, and we've had an existing ordinance that addressed distracted driving and actually mentions use of a cell phone or a mobile phone with a hands-free device. The ordinance is in dire need of revision. Some of the verbiage is antiquated and it's questionably enforceable. This would provide an opportunity, if you were to choose to adopt this ordinance, would provide an opportunity to essentially replace and repeal that section of the municipal code. It's also important for me to mention the difference between a primary and a secondary offense. Okay, so a primary offense would be an offense, either a state statute, in this case we're talking about a municipal code, that enables a police officer to, in this case, stop a motorist if he or she sees has a reasonable suspicion to believe that an offense has occurred. Okay. The secondary would be if another state statute is violated, and then that statute or ordinance, as part of that collective incident, there's a reasonable suspicion, then it can be cited. That would be a secondary offense. The way our current ordinance is written is a secondary offense. So our officers could not, if they saw someone that was talking on their phone without a hands-free device, our current ordinance would not allow them to make a stop because it is a secondary offense. Does that make sense to you all? Mm-hmm. So the county's ordinance is written, and the one that's been modeled by the cities in Yavapai County, which I've delineated, is a primary offense. And that's the one that's brought to you today, just so you understand the difference in moving from what we currently have, which most cities in Arizona don't even have what we had. So again, kudos to the city, and I'm not sure the origin of our Muni code in that regard, but I think we were ahead of our day in drafting that. I think it's, at this point in time, proper time for you to consider moving forward, adopting this particular ordinance for a number of reasons, which I'll touch on here in a second. The ordinance as it's proposed, like I said, is very, very similar to the county's ordinance. Chino Valley has done the same thing, Prescott Valley has done the same thing, and Prescott proper has as well, with the intent to collectively reduce the confusion of drivers that travel from community to community within our county, not knowing if we didn't have this type of collaboration in our county, the laws would be different in each community, which would create confusion for the motoring public, and would be difficult for us to quite frankly educate the public on the nuances and different distracted driving laws in each individual community in the county. Glancing at today's social media, I think it's probably pertinent for me to mention that I think there's some people out there that have an understanding that if the county adopts an ordinance, all the municipalities within the county are subject to that ordinance, and that's not the case. The county's ordinance only applies to unincorporated county areas. Ask Mr. Horton if he has any comments, if I'm on track here, or he'd like to make any comments regarding the legality of such a proposed ordinance.
Well, I think the chief's done a commendable job of leaving very little for the lawyer to add. Comprehensive presentation. I think he did want me to maybe touch on with the, to the extent there's any concern that the state legislation that's moving through would impact. There is no problem. The way the bill, well, so there was a bill just recently dropped, and the way it's written, and I don't see it changing, because the way for the state to prevent local government from legislating in an area is either to occupy that field or to specifically say so in the proposed legislation. The bill that's currently now under consideration or about to be under consideration doesn't do that, and I certainly, given the climate, I don't see that happening. I don't see the state attempting to preclude regulation that does not conflict directly with the state law, and this does not.
Thank you, Mr. Horton, and I'd like to add some commentary to what our city attorney just said. If you're interested, the House bill that was introduced yesterday by Senator Kavanaugh is HB 2069, which unfortunately falls short of the comprehensive nature of the ordinance that's before you today and that has been adopted throughout our county. The House bill that's that, like I said, it was just introduced yesterday, focuses solely on texting. And I can tell you from a law enforcement perspective, there's significant challenges with enforcing a texting ban, particularly if it's secondary offense. So you might as well not even waste your time and legislate it, in my opinion. If it's a primary offense, it still becomes very challenging to prove in a court of law that the person was not talking on their phone rather than texting. They could be dialing a phone number. There's many defenses that a defendant could bring to court, which essentially kind of eviscerates the effectiveness of a texting-only ordinance in your police chief's humble opinion. Would you like to add to that, Counselor?
I agree.
And just lastly, I'll throw out as if we needed more justification. I mean, there's no question that distracted driving costs thousands of lives across the country, untold number of injuries, and an incredible amount of property damage. Very difficult to quantify, though. There's a lot of it self-reported after the fact, after there's a collision, trying to discern whether there was a distracted driving variable influencing the collision or not. The only stat we were able to find is the U.S. Department of Transportation through NHTSA reported that around 3,500 people died in 2015 due to distracted driving incidents, although we can presume that that actual number is significantly higher for the reasons that I just mentioned. Today, and I've neglected to mention, I'm joined by Commanders McCooch and Braxton. And if you'll notice, we're all wearing badge shrouds today for Officer Clayton Townsend, Salt River Indian Police Department officer that was tragically killed on the 101, allegedly by a distracted driver, and was put to rest earlier today. I think that underscores the fact that our culture has to embrace a change, and many times that cultural shift is there needs to be elected leaders that step up to the plate and that codify what's right and wrong. And in this case, we know, I think if you ask anybody on the street, and even if you look at some of the commentary on the social media that's just come up today on our posting, people overwhelmingly recognize the danger of distracted driving, and I think they overwhelmingly recognize the government's need to set the standard here. If you choose to adopt the, go back to my notes here, and I am proud to say that my notes are kind of wrinkled because they were caught in the rain. In Arizona, that's a good thing, so I will not complain. But in closing, if you, as a council, choose to implement the ordinance, we would institute obviously adopt the ordinance. We would choose to enact an implementation plan that would surround itself in the public education arena, and the plan would be 90 days focusing on education rather than enforcement after council chooses to adopt. So when it's enacted, you'd have 60 more days before we would write our first citation. We would be active on social media and trying to use the media outlets that we have available to us, and also contacts that our staff has with the public in the meantime to ensure that the public was aware of the impending change in the ordinance. With that, staff's recommendation to council is to adopt the ordinance 656 that you have in form before you tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Chief Gesell?
I just have a statement.
Sure.
I think probably everybody sitting in this room has done it at least once. Looked at your phone while you're driving and then freaked yourself out because you probably realized you weren't concentrating on the road. With the technology available today, and the City of Cottonwood's never afraid to be the first person out there to make this step, and though we're not this time around, I think it would behoove us to do it. The technology is not outrageously expensive as it was even 2 years ago to do hands-free device. Most newer cars, you hook your phone up to your radio and you talk to your radio. It's just that the availability of that technology is there. We are able to never have an excuse to text or be distracted while we're driving with our cell phones. So I would be completely supportive of this.
Same thing. I mean, it's a no-brainer. But we all know also that an ordinance isn't going to stop anybody from doing anything. So, and in fact, I had an experience 6 weeks ago. I was coming up Interstate 17 in the northbound lanes just back past Black Canyon City, and the lady in front of me made a U-turn and drove by me like this. Fortunately, I mean, I don't think anything happened. I think she figured it out pretty quickly. I tried waving her down and stopping, but, so I mean, I've seen it, and you see it around town. So the one thing I would ask you to do, enforce it. Start writing tickets. It's a small town, word will get out. And that I think is the best motivation to get people to think twice about doing something like that. So work it.
Something else I've noticed is that when you go into Sedona, and I don't go to take my kids to play, I go for Chinese food. There's a sign, you know, as you're coming in that says we are hands-free or something like that, you know. And I would encourage, you know, some signage as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Allhouse. And I was remiss in failing to mention the City of Sedona has had an existing ordinance, freestanding ordinance for that city since 2014. Written obviously different than the one we're proposing tonight, but certainly proactive nonetheless.
All right. Any other comments?
Well, it's safe to assume then that Sedona's ordinance hasn't been challenged in court as being unlawful, is that correct?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And the county's hasn't been challenged, so if we were to adopt the same ordinance as the county, we should be in good stead.
One would think. I mean, it was just recently adopted, but
I have absolutely no concerns about the lawfulness of this. As a matter of fact, this is pretty soft. I mean, as council knows, and for the record, this is a civil traffic violation. We're not even criminalizing this
So it
behavior.
would not carry points.
On a civil traffic violation, I don't believe so.
I'm not sure. It's not a moving violation, so I don't think
It's going to be moving to the points.
But it's certainly an opportunity, I think, to Councilman Matthews' point, for education whenever somebody is either pulled over for something else and seen doing this or pulled over for this. I
Yes.
think that's the goal.
Definitely is a hazard when they're on the road, because they're not paying attention to their driving.
All right. Anything else?
I just want to chime in quickly because it is late and say thank you. This is great. I'm glad we're addressing it, and I appreciate that you're being proactive about this. It is something I think we all deal with on a weekly basis, somebody being distracted on the roadway, whether it's their phone or otherwise. This is a very big positive step. Thank you.
thank you.
Yes, and I would agree, 100% supportive. Are there any folks here tonight? This is just the first reading. It's a public hearing, really. Are there any folks here to speak in support, speak against this ordinance? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the floor, and we'll bring it back for a second reading, I believe. Hearing consensus there, and if we could please have the city clerk read ordinance number 656 by title only.
Ordinance number 656, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, amending Title 10, Vehicles and Traffic, Chapter 10.16, Operation of Vehicles of the Municipal Code by deleting Section F under Section 10.16.050, Miscellaneous Traffic Enforcement Rules, and adding a new Section 10.16.080, Use of Electronic Devices. Mr. Mayor.
Very good, thank you. Thanks to the two commanders, too, for your work on this. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to second to last item is number 4, annual appointment of council representatives to various organizations, committees, and boards related to intergovernmental, regional, and other matters. And it's not fair because you're out now, so.
Yeah, baby.